Picture this. You are standing in the middle of the Ice Age. Snow stretches in every direction. Ice covers the rivers. Ice coats the rocks. There is frozen water as far as your eyes can see. And in 3 days, you will be dead. Not from the cold, not from a predator, from thirst. That sounds insane, right? You're surrounded by water. How could you possibly die of thirst? But this was real. This was the single deadliest problem your ancestors faced. Not hunting mammoths, not fighting off cave lions, just finding water they could actually drink. For more than 100,000 years, every human alive faced this. And here's the terrifying part. The more snow and ice around them, the harder it became. Frozen water didn't save ancient humans. Frozen water tried to kill them. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how they survived, the deadly mistake that killed the careless, the hidden water that never froze, and the genius trick that modern survival experts still teach today. So how do you die of thirst in a world made of water? Let's start with the mistake that killed people first. There's one obvious answer staring you in the face. Just eat the snow. Snow is frozen water. Put it in your mouth, let it melt. Done. It feels like common sense. It is also one of the fastest ways to die in the cold, and almost nobody knows why. Here's the science. Your body runs at 37 degrees Celsius. Snow sits far below freezing. When you swallow snow, your body has to heat it up before it can use a single drop. And where does that heat come from? From inside you, from the warmth keeping your heart beating and your brain alive. Every mouthful of snow steals your core temperature. In a normal climate, that's uncomfortable. In the Ice Age, that's a death sentence. This is not a myth. It's why every wilderness survival manual on Earth, including the US Army's own field guide, warns you never to eat snow for water. Eating snow to survive can drop your body into hypothermia. You don't quench your thirst, you freeze yourself from the inside out. So prehistoric humans had a brutal rule. Never eat the snow raw. Never trust the easy answer. But that rule created a deeper problem, because if you can't eat the snow, you need liquid water. And in a frozen world, liquid water was almost impossible to find. There was also a second danger, one that worked silently, with no warning at all. In the cold, your own body lies to you. When you're hot, thirst hits fast. Your mouth dries, your throat tightens, your brain screams at you to drink. That thirst is a survival alarm. But in extreme cold, that alarm breaks. Scientists call it cold-induced dehydration, and it has killed more explorers than starvation ever did. Here's how it works. When you get cold, your body pulls blood inward to protect your organs. Doctors call this peripheral vasoconstriction. Suddenly, your core is flooded with blood. Your brain reads that flood as, "I have plenty of fluid," so it switches off your thirst. You stop feeling like you need water at all. But you're still losing it. Every breath you exhale in the cold turns to white mist. That mist is your body water, gone. You lose it sweating under heavy furs while you walk. You lose it constantly, and you never feel a thing. Polar researchers and mountaineers have documented this for decades. People in freezing climates get dangerously dehydrated without ever feeling thirsty. They feel fine, right up until they collapse. Now imagine you're a Stone Age human on a frozen plain. No thirst warning, no alarm, just a slow, invisible drain on your body. Ice Age survival wasn't about reacting to thirst. It was about drinking before your body even asked. You had to fight a battle you couldn't feel. So how did they win it? It started with the one thing that made humans different from every animal on Earth: fire. Now you've heard fire kept people warm. You've heard it cooked their food. But here's the part nobody talks about. Fire is what gave ancient humans water. Think about what a fire really did on that frozen plain. A Stone Age human could pack snow into a leather pouch, or melt it in a hollowed stone beside the flames, and watch the impossible happen. Frozen, deadly snow slowly became warm, safe, drinkable water. Stop and feel that for 1 second. The same snow that could kill you by eating it became the thing that kept you alive. The only difference was fire. This is why controlling fire was the most important survival skill humans ever developed. The earliest hard evidence of humans controlling fire comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Researchers found burnt bone and ash deep inside, dated to around 1 million years ago. Long before the last glacial maximum, our ancestors already held this power. And without it, the Ice Age would have been unsurvivable. Because fire was the only reliable way to turn a frozen planet into liquid water. No fire meant no melted snow. No melted snow meant death. It was that simple. So fire solved everything, right? Not even close. Because fire had one fatal weakness. And on the mammoth steppe, that weakness nearly wiped people out. Fire needs fuel. And here's the brutal truth most people never learn. We imagine the Ice Age as a world of endless snowy forests. That's completely wrong. Much of it was the mammoth steppe, a vast frozen grassland that wrapped around the planet, cold, windswept, and shockingly dry. The biologist R. Dale Guthrie spent his life studying this lost world. His book, Frozen Fauna of the Mammoth Steppe, describes it perfectly. It wasn't a forest, it was a frozen desert. Trees were rare. In many places, there were no trees for hundreds of miles, which meant there was almost nothing to burn. Think about what that does to a human trying to survive. You can't melt snow without fire. You can't make fire without fuel. And there's no wood anywhere. So every fire became a desperate calculation. Do you burn it for warmth, for cooking, or to melt water? You couldn't always have all three. This is the part that hits me every time. These were not slow, simple people. They were brilliant minds solving an impossible equation every single day, with nothing but their knowledge and their hands. And if you love stories like this, the forgotten genius of the people who came before us, subscribe right now. This channel exists to bring these humans back to life, the ones history forgot, the ones who survived a world that should have killed them. Because what they did next to solve the fuel problem is genuinely incredible. So how do you make fire on a treeless plain? You burn the unthinkable. Ice Age humans on the mammoth steppe learned to burn bone. Animal bone, packed with fat, actually burns hot once you get it going. Archaeologists have found ancient hearths filled with burnt bone instead of wood. They burned dried animal dung. They burned dried grass and twisted plants. Anything that would hold a flame long enough to melt snow into water. This was survival engineering at its finest. A whole technology built around one goal: keep the fire alive, keep the water flowing. But even this had limits. Bone fires were precious. Fuel was always running low. You couldn't melt all your water this way forever. So early humans needed something better. They needed water that nature kept liquid on its own. Water that flowed even in the deep freeze. And here's the secret most people never realize. Even during the Ice Age, not everything froze. Underground, the Earth holds heat. Deep springs kept bubbling to the surface, warm enough to stay liquid all winter long. Fast rivers resisted freezing in their churning centers. Some deep lakes stayed liquid beneath a lid of ice. These were the lifelines, the hidden water that meant survival. But they were scattered across a brutal frozen wilderness. No maps, no roads, no signs. So how did prehistoric humans find them? They used a method so clever it still works today. They followed the animals. This is one of the most important ancient survival skills ever discovered, and it's pure genius. Every creature on the mammoth steppe needed water too. Mammoths, wild horses, reindeer, bison. And animals can't melt snow over a fire. So animals always knew where the liquid water was. They had to. Their lives depended on it just as much as yours. Prehistoric hunters learned to read these animals like a map. They watched which direction the herds walked at dawn. They followed the deep paths worn into the earth by thousands of hooves. Those paths were called game trails, and game trails almost always led to water. But the real masters read even smaller signs. Animal tracks all pointing the same way meant a water source ahead. Birds flying low at dusk meant water below. Insects swarming in one spot meant moisture in the ground. Even the plants whispered the answer. Greener growth, softer soil, certain mosses and reeds. All of it pointed toward hidden water. This is why Ice Age humans weren't just strong. They were the greatest trackers who ever lived. Their survival depended on noticing tiny clues that you and I would walk straight past. A footprint, a bent blade of grass, a single circling bird. To them, these were directions written across the land. And once they found that water, they faced a new problem. How do you keep it? Because water, in the Ice Age, did not stay put. Here's something that sounds modern but is over 10,000 years old. Ice Age humans invented portable water. Think about the problem. You finally find a spring or an open river. You drink until you're full, but you can't carry a river with you. And the next water source could be a day's walk away, across a frozen plain, with no thirst warning to tell you you're running dry. So they got creative. They used the animals they hunted for more than meat. The stomach of a large animal became a water bag. A bladder became a canteen. Cleaned, dried, and sealed, these organs could hold liquid for days. Stitched leather pouches did the same job. Birch bark, folded and sealed with pitch, could hold water too. These were the first water bottles in human history, made from the land itself. And here's the truly clever part. In the deep cold, they could let water freeze solid inside a pouch. A block of clean, frozen water. Easy to carry, impossible to spill. Then at camp, beside the fire, they simply melted it again. Frozen storage on the move, liquid water on demand. They turned the cold from an enemy into a tool. The very thing trying to kill them became their refrigerator. This is the kind of intelligence we never give these people credit for. No factories, no science books, just deep, hard-won knowledge of how the world worked. But where did all that knowledge even come from? Nobody wrote it down. So how did it survive? The answer is one of the most beautiful things about being human. They remembered, and they taught. There was no writing during most of the Ice Age. No books, no schools, no maps. Every single thing ancient humans knew about water lived inside their heads. Which spring never froze? Which river stayed open in winter? Which valley held water after the thaw? Which snow was safe to melt and which was fouled? All of it was memory, passed from parent to child, from elder to youth. Around the fire, night after night, generation after generation. Think of it as a living library, a library with no shelves and no pages, stored entirely in human minds and spoken aloud. And it had to be perfect. Because one forgotten water source could kill an entire family. One wrong turn on a frozen plain meant death. This is why hunter-gatherer elders were so respected. An old person wasn't weak or useless. An old person was a map, a walking record of every water source for 100 miles, a survival guide you could not afford to lose. When an elder died, knowledge died with them, sometimes knowledge that had been passed down for thousands of years. So Ice Age humans protected that knowledge like treasure, because it was treasure. It was the difference between life and death. And it worked. For over 100,000 years, this living library kept our species alive. But water wasn't only a winter problem, because when the seasons changed, the danger changed with them. We think of the Ice Age as endless frozen winter, but it had seasons too, and each season changed the water game completely. In the deep cold of winter, the problem was simple. Everything was frozen. You needed fire, fuel, and the rare springs that stayed open. But then came the brief, powerful thaw, and suddenly the danger flipped. When the Ice Age summer arrived, the great glaciers began to melt. Meltwater poured off the ice in roaring streams. Rivers swelled, lakes filled. For a short window, water was everywhere. This was the moment early humans waited for all year. A chance to drink freely, a chance to camp beside reliable water, a chance to store up before the freeze returned. Archaeologists have noticed something striking. Ancient campsites cluster around rivers, lakes, and springs. Prehistoric humans built their lives around water sources, not by accident, by necessity. Where the water was, the people were. Where the water vanished, the people moved. This is why so much of Ice Age survival was about movement. They followed the herds, they followed the seasons, but more than anything, they followed the water. The whole rhythm of human life bent around finding the next drink. It shaped where they walked, it shaped where they slept, it shaped who lived and who died. But the summer thaw hid a danger of its own, because not all that meltwater was safe, and drinking the wrong water could be just as deadly as no water at all. Here's a problem that still kills people in the wild today. Not all water is safe to drink, even in the Ice Age. When the glaciers melted, the water didn't always run clean. Glacial meltwater is often thick with rock dust. Scientists call it glacial flour. It's so fine it clouds the water gray. Drink too much of it and it can wreck your stomach. Pooled, still water carried other dangers: bacteria, parasites, rot from dead animals upstream. So ancient humans couldn't just drink from any puddle. They had to choose. And here's where their knowledge shined again. They learned that fast, moving water was safer than still water. They learned that water from a clear spring beat water from a muddy pool. They learned that snow falling fresh from the sky was cleaner than old snow on the ground. And fire helped here too. Heating water near the flames didn't just melt it, it could make foul water safer to drink. Whether they fully understood why or not, the people who boiled or warmed their water simply got sick less often. And in a world with no medicine, getting sick could be a death sentence. A bad stomach meant weakness. Weakness meant you couldn't keep up. Falling behind on a frozen plane meant the end. So choosing the right water was a survival skill all its own. Not just finding water that wouldn't kill you. This is the layer most people never think about. Ice Age survival wasn't one problem. It was a stack of deadly problems, all tangled together, and water sat at the center of every single one. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's the most human part of all. Finding water was only half the battle. The other half was not wasting it. Ice Age humans learned to protect the water already inside their bodies. And this is where they were truly ahead of their time. Remember, in the cold, you lose water without feeling it. Every breath, every drop of sweat. So the smartest survivors learned to control their own bodies. They paced themselves. Moving too fast in heavy furs meant sweating. Sweating meant losing precious water and soaking your clothes. Wet clothes in the cold could kill you. So they moved with discipline, slow and steady on the long treks, shedding a layer before they overheated, stopping before the sweat soaked in. They learned to breathe smart. Covering the mouth in brutal cold trapped some moisture from each breath. Small tricks, tiny savings. But across a long winter, those small savings meant survival. This is body wisdom we've almost completely lost. Modern humans don't think about water like this. We turn a tap. We never run dry. But prehistoric humans treated every drop as sacred, because for them, it was. There was no backup, no second chance, only the water they found and the water they kept. And here's what amazes me most. They did all of this without understanding the biology. They didn't know about cold-induced dehydration. They didn't know about peripheral vasoconstriction. They just knew, from generations of trial and death, what worked. That's not ignorance. That's the deepest kind of intelligence there is, knowledge written in survival itself. And there was one more enemy they had to outsmart. The water they worked so hard to collect wanted to freeze again. Leave a full water skin out overnight on the mammoth steppe, and by morning it's a useless block of ice. All that effort, frozen solid, wasted. So they learned to protect it. They kept the water skins close to their bodies as they slept, sharing their own warmth to keep the water liquid. They tucked them near the banked fire, wrapped them in furs and hides. Some even kept water inside their sleeping furs all night long. Their body heat alone kept it from freezing, so they'd have something to drink the moment they woke. It sounds like a tiny detail, but it was the difference between waking up with water and waking up with nothing, between an easy morning and a desperate one. Every choice, down to where you set your water skin at night, could decide whether you lived or died. That is how total the war for water really was. So let's pull it all together, because when you see the full picture, it changes how you see your own life. And here's the best part. We don't have to guess how they did it, because people were still doing it within living memory. Look at the Inuit of the Arctic. They lived through cold as brutal as the Ice Age itself, and they mastered water in ways that will blow your mind. They almost never ate snow for water. Just like our ancestors, they knew it stole body heat. Instead, they melted snow and ice over a single oil lamp, a stone lamp burning seal fat called a kulik. That tiny flame turned ice into water hour after hour in the heart of winter. But here's the trick that sounds impossible. The Inuit could drink water made from sea ice. Sea ice is frozen ocean. It should be far too salty to drink. Yet they knew a secret. Old sea ice, ice that has survived more than 1 year, slowly loses its salt. The salt drains out over time, so multi-year ice melts into fresh, drinkable water. Think about how deep that knowledge runs. They could look at a frozen sea, point to one specific block of ice, and know it was safe, while the ice right beside it would make you sick. This is the exact same intelligence Ice Age humans used, reading frozen water like a language, knowing which ice gives life and which ice gives death. This is why studying living Arctic peoples tells us so much about the deep past. The problem never changed, the cold never changed, and the solutions, passed down through countless generations, barely changed either. Survival in the freeze always came down to the same thing: knowing your water. And that knowledge had to be precise, because the ice itself could trick you. Here's something almost nobody thinks about. Not all ice is equal, and ancient humans had to learn the difference or die. Picture a frozen river. To you and me, it's just white ice. But to a Stone Age survivor, that ice was a story. Clear blue ice was old and dense, often the cleanest, safest water once melted. Cloudy white ice was full of trapped air and snow, less water for the same effort. The color told them how much fire and fuel they'd need to melt it. And fuel, remember, was life or death on the mammoth steppe. They learned to read ice for danger, too. Where ice was thin, water moved fast underneath. Where it was thick, it might be safe to cross to reach a spring on the far side. A wrong step through thin ice meant falling into freezing water. And falling in, far from a fire, was a death sentence. So they tested, they watched, they listened. The sound of cracking ice told them where it was weak. The shape of the surface told them where water flowed below. This is the part that humbles me. We see a frozen landscape and see nothing. They saw a map, a warning, a promise, a guide to the nearest drink. Every ridge of snow, every patch of bare ice, every frozen ripple meant something. It was a language written across the whole frozen world, and prehistoric humans were fluent in it. They had to be, because in the Ice Age, misreading the water meant misreading the difference between life and death. So, when we ask how they survived, this is the real answer. Not strength, not luck, knowledge. Deep, precise, life-saving knowledge of water in all its frozen forms. Now, let's pull every piece of it together. Let me show you what this actually looked like. One single day of getting water in the Ice Age. You wake before dawn in a shelter of hide and bone. Your mouth isn't dry. Remember, the cold has switched off your thirst, but your body is already running low. The fire from last night is almost dead. First job, keep it alive, because without fire, there is no water. You feed it scraps of bone and dried dung, coaxing the flame back. Now you melt. You pack clean snow into a hide pouch and set it by the heat. It melts slowly, painfully slowly. A whole morning of fire might give you just a few cups of water. That's the brutal math of Ice Age survival. Hours of work for a single drink. Water was never free. It was earned, drop by drop, every single day. But the camp needs more than a few cups. Children need water. Elders need water. So someone has to go find the real source. You set out across the frozen plain. You read the land as you walk. A line of reindeer tracks, a worn game trail, birds dropping low in the distance. Every sign is a clue pointing toward open water. You move slow and steady, not because you're weak, because sweating would soak your furs and drain your water. Discipline keeps you alive. Maybe you reach a spring that never freezes. Maybe a river still running fast beneath the ice. You drink deep. You fill the bladders and skins, and you carry that heavy, precious water all the way back. By the time you return, half the day is gone. Half a day for water. This was the rhythm of human life for 100,000 years. Wake, tend fire, melt, search, carry, conserve. Then do it all again tomorrow. We complain when the tap runs slow. They built their entire existence around the search for a drink. And somehow, through all of it, they didn't just survive, they thrived. They spread across the coldest corners of the earth. They turned the most hostile planet imaginable into home. All because they refused to lose the war for water. Now, finally, let's pull every piece together. Let's go back to where we started. A human standing on a frozen plain, surrounded by water, 3 days from dying of thirst. Now look at everything they had to know to survive. They had to know never to eat the raw snow, or the cold would freeze them from the inside. They had to know their own thirst would lie to them, and drink before their body ever asked. They had to master fire, the only tool that turned deadly snow into life-giving water. They had to find fuel on a treeless plain, burning bone and dung when there was no wood. They had to find the hidden springs and open rivers, the rare water that never froze. They had to read the animals and the land, following game trails and circling birds to the water below. They had to store water in bladders and frozen pouches, carrying their lifeline across the frozen miles. They had to choose clean water over foul and conserve every drop already inside them. And they had to remember all of it, passing this living library down through 100,000 years. That is not survival by luck. That is survival by genius. These were not primitive cavemen. They were experts, masters of one of the hardest problems nature ever invented. And every one of them passed the test, because if even one had failed, you would not be here. Which brings us to the part that should stop you in your tracks. You are the proof that they succeeded. Think about it carefully. You exist right now, which means every single one of your ancestors found water. Every winter, every drought, every frozen plain, for tens of thousands of years. Not one of them died of thirst before having children. Not one of them failed when it mattered most. If a single link in that chain had broken, you would not exist. You are the unbroken result of the greatest survival streak in history. A streak that ran through the entire ice age and never broke. Sit with that for a moment. The water in your body right now connects directly back to those people, to the springs they found, to the snow they melted by firelight, to the rivers they followed across a frozen world. We carry them inside us, not as a metaphor, literally. The same fight for water that kept them alive is the reason you can breathe today. And here's the part that gets me. We've forgotten all of it. We turn a tap without a thought. We waste more water before breakfast than they found in a week. The hardest problem in human history, solved by people we never thank, forgotten in a single generation of pipes and plumbing. So the next time you fill a glass of water, pause, just for 1 second. Remember the ancient humans who fought for every drop, the ones who turned a frozen world into a place we could survive. But there's one last thing I have to tell you, because this story isn't really about the past, it's about you. That invisible danger we talked about, cold-induced dehydration, it still happens, right now, to modern people. Hikers, skiers, soldiers. Every winter, people in cold places get dangerously dehydrated. And just like our ancestors, they never feel it coming. Their bodies still lie to them. The exact same survival problem our ancestors solved 100,000 years ago is still hardwired into your body today. You carry the danger, and you carry their solution. That's why modern survival experts still teach the Ice Age rules. Never eat snow for water, melt it first. Drink before you feel thirsty. Follow the land to find the source. These aren't new ideas, they're ancient ones. Wisdom paid for in lives, tens of thousands of years ago, still saving people today. That's the real power of understanding the people who came before us. They aren't gone. Their solutions live on inside every one of us. We just stopped listening. And the more you learn about how ancient humans actually lived, the more you realize something stunning. They weren't simpler than us. In many ways, they understood the world far better than we do. Water was just one of their impossible problems. And they didn't just solve it, they mastered it. So let's answer the question we started with. How did humans actually find water during the Ice Age? They never ate the raw snow. They beat their own lying bodies. They mastered fire to melt the frozen world. They burned bone when there was no wood. They found the hidden springs that never froze. They followed the animals to water. They read the ice itself, knowing which gave life and which gave death. They carried it in bladders and frozen pouches. They kept it from freezing with their own body heat. They chose the clean over the foul. And they remembered every lesson for 100,000 years. The Ice Age didn't survive humans. Humans survived the Ice Age, one drop of water at a time. And that frozen world that tried to kill them, it shaped everything about who we became. Our intelligence, our memory, our endless drive to survive. Water made us who we are. But water was only one of their battles, because the same Ice Age that tried to freeze them also tried to starve them. And the way these people hunted the largest animals on Earth, with almost nothing in their hands, is even more unbelievable than this. That's the story I want to show you next. Click the video on your screen right now, and let's keep uncovering the world before civilization.